James, thank you so much for having us and inviting us to your home.
Welcome.
So happy to be here again in Barry,
Welcome
Georgia.
back. Yeah, to
Yes.
Farmdale. I'm so glad you're here.
So we've got to start with your build project.
Okay.
I know you've been here about 10 years, but tell us about how you came to build this gorgeous home.
Well, thank you. It was a labor of love, but the property is part of some family property, and my aunt and uncle lived here on the property. I grew up coming out here to fish or run through the woods or camp, or it was kind of a part of what we did. And there was a little piece of the property that I really liked that would be like a dale or kind of a clearing in the woods. So I thought one day I'll build a house here, and one day happened about 10 years ago. And when you know where you're going to live and kind of set up camp, makes the decisions easy, So I knew this is where I wanted to be, and close to town, close to family, and everything just fell into place.
Okay, you're building from scratch. That means you can go anywhere, right? I mean, not
Right.
location-wise, but style-wise. So how did you land on the style that you did and end up staying true to that vision from the start?
Well, it's so nice to have a decision that's made for you. So the land, the property is heavily wooded. So to me, a big house with big columns in the middle of the woods just wasn't the right Southern vernacular. And for me, a cottage was that right vernacular, which is often thought about as language, but think about language when it comes to architecture as well. So the pine bark, when it's wet, well, that's the color of the painted cypress. I thought a cottage had much more of a feel as opposed to something of a different vernacular. So the landscape, the natural flora really, to me, dictated the type of house. And then I could go from there. And everything from brick and the color of the earth, the color of the soil, really influenced. So when you take a piece of wet pine bark in today's hardware to match the paint color, and that's the color of your house.
Is that what you did?
That's exactly what I did.
Wow.
And so that's why it, to me, fits in so well with the surrounding.
Is that what you would recommend to people, using the location as really the jumping off point? Because I imagine that's not where most people start.
It's funny to me, a lot of people are inspired by something. Let's say they went on this fabulous trip to Tuscany, and then they come back and they live in a suburb outside of Atlanta. Well, maybe that can inspire something, but if you live where you live and it's in the middle of a development or a neighborhood or a piece of property in Georgia, I would look to those inspirations first and then gather from that. So whether it's something, a tree, the tree bark, foliage, or perhaps even the type of soil. If it's a red, kind of orangey clay, that's going to be reflected in pavement and paint, and so you want to think about all those colors put together. So inspiration can come from the wildest places, but they don't have to be far-fetched. It doesn't have to be international when it could just be the color of the trees on your property.
Right, well, because you're not going to be able to change the soil. That's going to be there, so.
Bingo.
Yeah, you want to work with it. Okay, what about the inside? Because we hear from designers all the time that they have really basically decorated the whole house before they've even broken ground. Is that what you did in your own project?
It was an evolution from the very get-go. So for me, I knew I wanted some things that I would never tire of. And in that sense, I always go back to traditional and kind of a classic Southern style. It's comfortable, it's recognizable. I always joke that, I love like the house that I grew up in, and I think about the mid to late 90s and how that felt and smelled, and how I still to this day gravitate towards some things that maybe were more tailored, or there's a little ruffle here or there, whatever it was. But at the same time, the inside can evolve. And so if you go through a phase where all of a sudden you want everything neutral, well, perhaps you bought artwork that has more color. Well, it'll pop now, even more so. So I like to kind of keep things a little more neutral for the background, and then let the color come into play with accents, with art, and lamps. Those are easier to trade out as opposed to wall covering. And then at the end of the day, I'll quote my grandmother, because I quote her so much, it's just paint. You can paint something. Maggie Griffin's grandmother said the same thing. It's paint. Yeah. And I think if you just come around to it, that you can change that. There are certain things you can do as well. And that to me is how the interiors evolve, because life changes.
So you sort of had a framework of what you wanted, but you hadn't really thought through like every single curtain trim and
No, I do that. So I think through all the details for a client. That's my day job. And then I come home and I think, oh man, I have to make another decision.
Right.
And so perhaps if I had 2 yards left over of something, or this one chair that we really liked on one project, but it was discontinued for the next project, it's hard to make those decisions for yourself. So sometimes the decisions are made for you. And luckily my design team, I hired them one day and I said, y'all come over for a consult, treat me like a client. I'm going to be a terrible client because I may change my mind, but what I needed was them to say this, this, or that. The same thing we do for our customers and clients. And that made all the difference for me when I had a different perspective. And then you're standing there in your kitchen in your pajamas having your cup of coffee and it hits you, I could do this.
yes.
And sometimes that inspiration just comes from those little moments.
One of the things that I just love about your house, and it's so unique, is your entry is your dining room.
Yes.
Essentially, you walk in and you are right there in the dining room. It suits you perfectly because you are such a wonderful host. You've got 10 books, half of which are about entertaining. You've got a cookbook. I know you've got a big family here, so you're always having people over. Where did the design for, really the entry to be the dining room come from?
Well, my good friend Robert Norris, he drew the house. It started from this idea, it became a house plan that you can order, but every square foot counted. Every square foot was $1. I love a foyer, I love an entrance moment, I love a table with big flower arrangement in the center, but I also needed a dining room that could seat a dozen people quickly. And so the idea for the dining room to also be like an entry hall, we thought was so novel, so avant-garde. And then anytime I've been to Europe or to older houses, they have reception halls. They have these amazing foyers. They have these entries that a table can be set up. It's an overflow from the dining room. So just as soon as you think you are novel and avant-garde, it's already been done before. So the dining room as kind of an entry hall gets the party started. You open the front door, you see the table set, you see the flowers for a dinner party. But for me, just each and every day, I love walking through that door. And dining rooms are so formulatic and nice to have. It's a table, chairs, a couple side pieces.
True.
So it stays a little constant. So it's not filled with all the boxes that you've ordered. It's not filled with the mail. It's kind of my clean, neutral zone, and nice to walk into that.
They are very structured and symmetrical, I guess.
They are.
So
They are.
that's nice and orderly when you walk in.
We like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that space because, like I said, you're such a great host. But also the colors really set the tone for both the indoors and the outside too. We've got a lot of the same colors out here. So talk us through the color palette you use throughout the whole house and where that really came from.
Well, one of my favorite colors is white. But if you go back to what color is, white is a reflection of all colors. And so one of my favorite quotes about that is from our cabinet maker, and he said, are your cabinets going to be white or white? That's a big difference. Is it creamy or is it more linen, or does it have a blue undertone, does it have a gray undertone? And to me, it's one of the most difficult colors to kind of capture. My brick is all made of Georgia red clay. My floors are all heart pine, so that's all in that honey, peachy clay tone. So I needed a white that was creamier base as opposed to more of a laboratory. So when people think about me, they think about often my favorite color. We joke about coral, peaches, and therein, and I use it a lot, but it's not necessarily as a wall color or a paint color. The grass cloth has faded to kind of a softer peach. The creamier white, it's Benjamin Moore linen white. I love that good undertone of cream it has. And so I go to those colors and they are all reflected then in the pine, the cypress, the brick. And so you psychologically see a lot of color, but nothing's necessarily treated like that. And I love that approach. My favorite colors are those uncolors. Is it cream? Is it white? Is it peach? Is it coral?
Yeah, they're nuanced.
They're nuanced, and then age helps with that too.
Well, there's something about the brown undertones that make them feel not new.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is excellent in a house that you want to kind of, that's new, that you don't want it to look new.
Yeah, if you're painting new lumber and it's yellow pine or heart pine, that has yellow and honey and amber and umber undertones. and it's going to take lots and lots of paint to cover that, or less paint with the right tone, because they work together.
Right.
And so it's that, like you said, those nuances that I think make all the difference when it comes to finishes.
You know, you're such a traditionalist, and you're so many decorative accents, skirted tables and pleated lampshades and trims we love. But in your home, you do have sort of an open floor plan. So I'm curious how you tried to divide or define the spaces in a way that's more traditional, but keeping that flow for entertaining.
Well, anyone who has an open floor plan is going to say, oh, you have to keep everything clean because you see everything at once. What's so helpful with that is to have some demarcation. Cased openings, great door jambs. It can still be open, but you can still have demarcation. You can still have those lines. I love a wide cased opening. It frames the living room from the dining room, and you can stand and see the kitchen, and has a great cased opening. That framing helps. Newer builds tend to be completely wide open, and there's no trim, there are no details. That casing makes all the difference, because in that casing gives you wing walls. Wing walls, you can put grass cloth or wallpaper or paint, a painting, a mirror. You can then start furnishing and layering. So an open floor plan is great, it just needs some definition and demarcation.
So you've got your cased openings, and those help define the space, and then from there you're building your furniture plans sort of in those more structured spaces.
So I always look back to history for inspiration. Now, history, they had to be close to a fireplace for warmth. We like it for the ambiance. So the traffic pattern for contemporary living doesn't necessarily have to comply with historical inspiration. But I do often go to that for the jumping off point. So if there's a fireplace, I think about, is it just the background? Or is it that comfy chair next to the fireplace where you're reading or scrolling on Instagram, but you just like the gas logs that you click on with a remote? So you think about those kind of contemporary creature comforts, but from a historical setting. I love the way older rooms were arranged, because they were arranged for conversation. They were arranged for those tete-a-tete, you know, those wonderful times where you get together and you converse. But now they're arranged for a big TV.
Right.
So we have to think about that, of how do you start with a historical kind of inspiration for modern day living. To me, those cased openings help with that definition. It says that this is the den, or this is the dining room, or this is the kitchen, but they all can still flow.
So the other room that is such a little surprise, delightful surprise, is the den, which is kind of a tucked off to the side, I suppose. But then you walk in, beautiful, double height, and so cozy. Tell us about that space, because that's just what everyone wants out of a cozy family room.
So for my family room, or my den, I affectionately call it the Waller room, because my grandmother said that her children and grandchildren did not sit, they wallered. And that's what we do. If I want to, you know, I'm 6'4", good $2 and change. I don't daintily sit, I plop in the chair. I love to recline. That sofa's designed, it's, you know, this long, you know, so I can fully rest on it. So my Waller room really had some intentional design from the get-go. I wanted the vaulted ceiling. I have great ceiling height throughout the house, but I wanted to have rooms that felt like were a part of the evolution of how we live. So perhaps it was a back porch that was screened in or glassed in, or however it was enclosed. It starts to kind of tell a story. It's a step down from the main level, so it gives you a little bit of a journey. But then the vaulting is reminiscent of what's in the dining room. So it's as if maybe those two rooms were enclosed, or they were outdoor spaces, and they were brought into the home as the family needed.
Okay, I loved the color palette in there. You've got a little touch of blue, which you don't use a ton of. You're more of a green person. So it's a little bit of a departure. Talk about where that color palette came from.
So the color palette came from, there was a piece of fabric that I love, and it has fish and birds and lily pads and lotus. You know, it has a beautiful kind of documentation of a wetland. And the blue that you see in that room happens to be surrounded by glass on all four sides. So at any moment, you can look out a door or a window and see sky. I don't have that opportunity in other rooms. And so the idea that I could reflect a little bit of blue inside, which I normally use as like an accent in porcelain or pottery or a lamp. But this opportunity, blue and green, they're related. And so to be able to see sky and garden and the way green and blue just work together, that was what drew me to that fabric, and then I pulled that blue out as an accent.
Yeah, and you've got those great double sofas. It's just such a cozy space.
Thank you.
What do you think are the must-haves for a room to really nail that cozy vibe?
To nail that cozy vibe, the scale has to be right. You have to think about, okay, we're not just sitting here, we're not dining here, we're wallowing here. So everything, the hand or the tactile of the fabric, the sofas are velvet, but they're channel quilted. So they're very durable. It's a heavy, thicker needlepoint on the deeper set chairs. That lasts a long time. It's also an animal print pattern, which hides a whole lot more than like a solid does.
Right.
So it's not just treated, it's quilted or it's needle pointed. And then there are little tucks in there like the bamboo rush top ottomans. I can move them. So if someone needs a place to sit or a footstool, or it's where I sit a tray down with, my dinner while I'm binge watching Downton Abbey again, it's able to be used in a multifaceted way.
Right.
And so having those creature comforts are so nice. Everything from long phone charge, there's a bathroom just off of there, there's a storage closet, may or may not be a Peloton in there, who knows? But it gives you the place to hide certain things, but also, you're right there. You can waller. And it's made for everything from binge watching to reading to, a bowl of cereal in the morning with the Today Show and a cup of coffee. It just kind of works. So it's facilitated appropriately for living.
Well, it seems people, I think maybe it's not that big of a room. And I think it might be easy to think that you really need a big space to get that much, function out of it. But it's really not petite, but it's right-sized, I guess.
Thank you. Well, to me, it goes back to scale. History of mankind and civilization, it's all interior design is psychology. I went to Auburn, it's a human science. We talk about this. Our first houses were huts, caves, little tucked away niches, and where do we feel protected and safe? And I think that's ingrained in us. And so a huge room is nice for 40 people, but when it's just you and you're hanging out and you're just chilling and unwinding, that coziness is great. The ceiling could be tall, but the room doesn't have to be as big. Scale and volume as opposed to square footage, I think. And that really helps with the cozy aspect.
James, we cannot leave without talking about antiques because you are just the master. You love antiques. I mean, a plate wall, antique chest, wood pieces. So I think antiques scare people sometimes because they're worried it's going to look like grandma's house. You do it in such a fresh way. How do you incorporate the antiques in a way that feels comfortable but not like you walked into an antique store?
One of the questions I often ask is, what was wrong with grandma's house? I mean, it's okay to be a little mama, little Mimi, little something. Antiques serve such a great purpose because they had a name and they were used intentionally. Sideboard. It was on the side and it was a board and you used it to serve. We may not use it for that intended purpose as much anymore, but the lines are phenomenal. The wood tones were so great. You may not use a tall dresser anymore, but I have a tall dresser in my closet that I love, and it was my great aunt's. And there's something about that because I'm tall and I'm getting dressed there. It's awesome how it works. And what I like about those older tones of wood is they mellow so well. You have everything from fruit wood to mahogany, and everyone thinks, oh, all brown furniture. No, there are different nuances and shades of those browns, those sepias, those mahogany undertones. I love French cherry and fruit wood, Pecky cypress, how these pieces come together. And then there are those very specific pieces. It may be a dresser or a sideboard, but they provide a great service because they were built for something very intentional.
Right.
Now we kind of have the excuse that we can use them for something else, and it gives them new life and purpose, and you can't recreate those patinas.
The thing about your design work, and even in your home, of course, is you take these antiques and you turn them into moments. They feel dramatic. You've got a collection of a collection of china on it, or you've got a gorgeous set of lamps and a great piece of art. It turns it into this focal point that really kind of draws you in.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you make them feel special.
You're sweet. Well, a stack of plates in the sideboard, used once a year at Christmas, why not use them somewhere? And so we don't really entertain in the way that our grandmothers and previous generations did, but we can be inspired by that. So whether it's a Welsh dresser or a break front or even just hang the plates on the wall, they're artwork. Those were hand painted. It's beautiful. Display them and use them in that sense. So I love creating those moments with antiques. Those pieces can't be truly replicated and recreated. And there's something so special about thinking, who used this? You know? And it's an homage to the past that I think is really lovely and should be embraced more.
Let's talk about the bedrooms a little bit, because like I said, you are such a great host. I know that you have lots of family nearby, so maybe they're not using your best guest bedroom, but how do you set up your guest bedroom to where it's really going to be inviting and comfortable for overnight guests?
I love to set up my guest rooms, not only here at Farmdale, but for our clients, as what chapter in life are they? So I have a room with twin beds, and there's a mattress underneath one of them. So my 3 nieces, they love to pile in there. The wallpaper and the color scheme in there, you know, is fun. It's kind of a little girl and has a little more frill to it, or baskets of toys, because I have nieces and nephews who also live in town. So they don't stay as much since they live in town, but when my out-of-town family comes, that's the room they want. And then their parents can have the room with the bigger bed and bathroom. So for me, I like to appoint rooms for the stage in life. As the girls grow up, and if my nieces need a bigger bed, well, it gives me an excuse to redecorate.
What about the actual comforts of a bedroom? You know, linens, towels. What kind of things do you think maybe people overlook when setting up their guest bedroom that really need to be top of mind?
I do have a little bit of formula with a bed. If it's a king
Gotta
bed,
know it. Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Okay.
€3, 2 big shams, 1 accent. Queen bed is 2, 2, 1. €2, 2 shams, 1 accent. And that works. It's a lot of pillows on the bed, but there's nothing like just falling. It looks great, but you fall into it, read a book, scroll on Instagram, it's comfortable. So for the bed linens themselves, I'm kind of more minimalistic. You have your fitted sheet, your top sheet, and a matelassé. Have a folded duvet or something at the foot of the bed. It's an option.
Right.
If you're cold, pull it up. If you're warm, push it down.
Right.
But those pillows, they can be seen as superfluous, but it looks so good. Why would you not want to look at a beautiful bed first and last thing each and every day? To me, that's very important. It is that first and last thing you see every day.
That's a great formula and easy to follow, I think, for anybody. Well, and it's, you know, you always want the bed to be your focal point in the bedroom. And the pillows are just like the finishing touch for that. It looks sad without them.
It does, it does. But that formula kind of works for me.
We have to get outside because you are known for your amazing talent outdoors. You have created, just like you have indoors with your antiques, these gorgeous moments all throughout your garden. And I love how you even tuck little seating areas into kind of unsuspecting places. And it really just is welcoming. So kind of walk us through that, because that's not something that most people are going to do.
Well, I love the joy of the journey. If you're meandering through the garden, and let's say that the geraniums are they're having their moment, why not sit and enjoy them? So like the 2 little chairs that are in the very center of my garden, you have to get to them. Well, you've gone there, you've taken that journey, you might as well sit a spell. And then when you sit down, you need a place to put a drink, so there's a garden stool between them. There's a wonderful ballard planter between the 2 with some succulents, and it makes me happy seeing that little moment. But that little moment is tucked in a bigger moment. It's that journey. And so if you've taken a journey, you may need a place to sit. Or if it's another spot, like it's a dining table, just off from the kitchen, and it's easy to bring a tray of things you've just grilled and you sit on the table. Outdoors have just come so far in the last decade, and I love creating those moments for whatever the particular occasion is. But for me, you're gonna find me outside with my coffee, you know, this cabana, the center part of my garden, the start and end each day.
What was your inspiration for the gardens at Farmdale? Because you've really created these little outdoor rooms, but where was the starting point?
So the starting point for the garden at Farmdale came from an older garden in Macon, Georgia. It was one of my first big projects, and the layout is often called a Spanish cross, where there's a circle, and then it's a cross section of pathways and 4 parterres. Par, peace, terre, earth. There's something you can't create inside that nature gives you. The birds, the little breeze. You know, there are things that it's like, gosh.
I mean, it is just truly idyllic here. So you've
Thank
done
you.
an amazing job creating that peaceful moment that you talk about.
Thank you.
What about the, you know, you talked a little bit about how far indoor outdoor furniture has come, but I love how you've mixed the outdoor furniture. You've got, you know, this sort of green rattan, you've got the teak, you've got this concrete, you've got the beautiful bluestone. So what is it about those combination of materials that appeals to you, and why are you mixing them outdoors?
Well, to me, it's like a reinterpretation of the tapestry, like of nature. So you have wood, you have, you know, trees, their bark, it always looks woven, so perhaps that's, you know, woven. You have the stone, which could be, you know, rock outcroppings. You have, I love, you know, just good old concrete because it works and it weathers. But you truly have to think about the same as interiors. What is the purpose? You're sitting in a chair that I like. I'm tall, I like a higher back. And those are nice by a fireplace, so they're by my outdoor fireplace. The seating arrangement, I love 2 sofas, 4 chairs. You see the same one inside.
Always works, yeah.
It always works. So here we are having this conversation, and I treated it just as I do an interior room. So then I mix finishes, teak, it's whitewashed, you know, you have woven, it's darker green. And then one thing that I love so much about the Ballard products in particular is the cushions are cut and shaped for those pieces of furniture. So if you like the color option from Ballard, great. For me, I like to change fabrics around, and so I did new fabrics on the Ballard pieces.
Right.
And they work, and that is to me a strong suit that y'all have. I love that I've used it all over, but you make it your own.
Yeah.
And so people think, oh, well, if we got everything from the same place, that's okay, you can make it your own. You can mix antique garden stools that are shaped like turtles.
Yeah.
You can take copper lanterns.
And this is gorgeous,
that can be your lamp. And so when you mix things together, you know, from brick and stone, metal and cedar, things like that are the architectural parts, then the soft parts, you just arrange it like a room, but it's outdoor.
Right. Well, it's, yeah, you know, you talked about all the textures you used in your Waller room. So you really have kind of done the same thing out here too. And I think maybe there's just some sort of mental block people have when they're decorating their outdoor spaces where it feels riskier to mix and match more so than it might be indoors. But you're showing us how easy
you can
and how
totally
it can
mix
be
and
done.
match. So, funny story, we have a saying in my design business, the same but different. This is the same but different.
Right.
It's not inside, it's outside, but it's treated the same.
I love how you've really drawn on your own personal experiences and real life places that you've loved to inspire Farmdale. It really just shows how much love and care you've put into the space, and I think that's just what makes it so beautiful here.
Thank you. There's one word that I would like to share with you and our friends watching, and it's unapologetic. I feel like sometimes people say, I'm so sorry that my furniture doesn't match. Why are you apologizing? In fact, just don't apologize. Say, welcome to my home. Would you like some tea?
Yeah.
They're not gonna remember your furniture not matching. Or, you know, don't apologize, oh, well, I had to mix this or that. Great, you've invited me to your house. That is lovely and kind and gracious. Thank you.
Yeah.
So when you're unapologetic about something, to me, it translates into becoming confident. And then that's when you know what? You can serve pizza at a dinner party and open a great bottle of wine, and it's a fun dinner party.
Yeah.
So
Who wouldn't enjoy that?
I would love it. I had a friend who made fun of me. He said, do you really serve pizza off your grandmother's china? I thought, yeah. But why not? I'm not using it. And so there's something so fun about having people in your home, whether it's a cabana or your dining room table inside. And that's a gift.
Yeah.
So don't apologize if you have to mix your silverware. Just say, enjoy, y'all, and welcome.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
I'm so glad you're here.
To see Farmdale, to show everyone, and we just are so grateful to
Thrilled
get to
you're here.
Chat with you.
You know, I've been a Ballard fan for a long time, so thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
For more house tours like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Ballard Designs YouTube channel and follow us on social media.